Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of the Sports Crib, home of the Sports Crib Network. Well, I don't know, you guys might not be able to see the joy in my eyes and on my countenance. Next Thursday is my birthday. Excuse me, next Friday is my birthday, to be accurate. But I feel as if today was an extra birthday present. Big Ben has retired. Thank you, Big Ben. And I hope you enjoy your retirement. With that being said, most people know that I have called for the Big Ben to lead the Steelers at least 2 years ago. I saw diminishing skills, but I saw no heir apparent. And to be frank, as a longtime Steeler fan, I mean, I really mean this. Black and gold until what's it said? Until dead and cold. Yes. When you knew that Mason Rudolph was not the heir apparent, we should have made arrangements then to have a stopgap. Knowing that you never pick higher than 25th, you're not going to get a Trey Lawrence, a Herbert, hell, even a Baker Mayfield at 25. Uh, Let me tell Mike. I think not on the right one. Bill. Well, it's Monday, man. Okay. Okay. Anyway, to get back uh, to what I was saying, let me send these two gentlemen the link. let me just. Let me see where. Okay. Anyway, hopefully, maybe Bill will be on by the time I get finished with this. But yes, I applaud what we did with our defense. Thought Joe Hayden was a little old, but right now it is what it is. As I said, I applaud Big Ben, applaud what he has done for the organization. 2 Super Bowls. I'm sure he'll get in the Hall of Fame. But where are we next season? Harris and Rudolph. Let's see what the next season brings. Anyway, there's a statue now of Kobe and his daughter at the crash site out here in LA. It goes to show how much an impact Kobe the man had in the world. There were, I believe, 19 other people that perished in this crash, whose lives will always be remembered due to the connection of Kobe and his daughter. It should be very interesting to see how this site will be managed. That has, I'm not sure how that is going to. It is a very remote site, but that hasn't usually stopped the looky-loos and whatnot, especially out here in a rich souvenir hunting environment. But hopefully, Bill is here somewhere. But see, that's usually what happens with officers, though. But it's usually second lieutenants. You know, I'll make sure that I mention that to Bill when he gets here. So anyway, um, I was going to talk a little. Oh yes, yes. Um, no, I'm going to let the guys get in for this. Mike, come on down. I'm not sure what happened. I said to Bill. Okay. Anyway, we'll kind of start the show over when Mike gets here, because Mike wanted to comment on the inductees to the Baseball Hall of Fame. So I'll also leave that for when Mike gets here, and hopefully when Bill gets here. Let's see. Oh, see, you know, see. In typical second lieutenant fashion, always lost.
I got sent a link on Wednesday. I clicked on it, and it took me back to Imperfect Union. What the heck?
See, that's what we used to always tell our second lieutenant in map reading. Yeah, if you look at the top of the map, land navigation, But anyway,
So I mean, I didn't know that you were going to send a link from like the other show. I was like, well, what's the link?
Well, like again, typical NCO fashion, we have our ducks in a row. So, I sent you Monday. I said, for every, first sergeant doesn't just send you your agenda for Monday. Yeah.
Right. I thought you decided to send me this show's link on Wednesday, not the Monday show link on Wednesday.
But anyway, I told Mike to come on down too, because it is 2 years ago yesterday, since the death of Kobe and his daughter and the other 19 people. I believe it was 21.
Right, and Coach Altabelli, right, who was a legendary baseball coach in the Orange County area. I don't think people talk about nearly enough.
Yeah, and so there's a statue there now, and of course, I was talking about Kobe's impact, not only, and you mentioned Coach Antabelli, but not just on the basketball world, but also on the world of sports. Here, China, Kobe's name is known. I mean, it's a well known, just like the shield or the NBA symbol. So what are your thoughts 2 years after Kobe's death?
Well, a lot of things have happened to sort of distance the, I talked earlier about how like the real Martin Luther King from like the secular thing. And to some extent, there's been a similar thing happening where they have this person they talk about who bears some resemblance to Kobe Bean Bryant. I mean, but he's not the person, right? He's this statue, I don't know. As you said, right? An icon, all those things that we talk about, but and there's a place for that, but for those of us who remember the real person, it definitely is something a little different from who you hear being discussed.
Yeah. It's more than just the Kobe Shaq this or the Kobe. It's I posed a question. What do you think the Lakers roster would look like had Kobe still been living?
Well, I mean, Kobe was going to retire. I mean, Kobe was retired at the time of his death, I don't think Kobe.
Well, so was Magic. So was Magic, but I mean, they
Right,
all
but the difference
had
is
their.
Magic was an actual employee of the Lakers for a while, but for off and off, on and off several times, and even was the coach for a while. Kobe was a player, and though he hung around, he never had any official position with the Lakers after his retirement.
No, I don't.
So,
I know. I know that he didn't have an actual position, but I mean, I don't think there's a lot of players that have an impact, especially within their organizations, that don't have actual positions, but yet and still influence. Have a position of influence. For instance, um, Dwight Howard, Anthony Davis. Do you think that perhaps Kobe would have been a better motivator, even though Dwight Howard is still on the Lakers roster? But do you think he might have been more of a motivator? We talked about Will Chamberlain, even. I mean, not excuse me, not was it Kareem? Even came out, talking about the ability of AD, but not having that killer instinct.
right, but that's not something you can impart to another person. I mean, like
No,
it's cool to talk about, and people put up posters and get mugs, with Mamba mentality on them and stuff like that. But those people are 255-pound, 5'8" salesmen. I mean, what are we talking about? So Kobe Bean Bryant becomes Kobe Bean Bryant, one, in sort of direct. I mean, we talked about the pettiness of greatness, greatness of pettiness, in part to show up his own father, right? Right? Kobe's original, mountain to climb was beating his dad. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. He wanted to be better than Joe. That was his initial driving impetus, was like to show his dad, sure, you played in the NBA, but I'm better, right? So that's the first thing. And then you have, this bright, inquisitive person who probably should have gone to college, who decides not to, just to show everyone he doesn't have to go to college. But he really, I think, would have thrived in a collegiate environment. And once again, he probably would have turned out a very different person, maybe even a better person, because he certainly did some dumb stuff for such an intelligent young man early in his career and early in his life. Once again, partially in, you guessed it, rivalry and competition with even his own teammates, right? And if not for that, I mean, there you would talk about, rosters, how they would have looked. What if Kobe didn't need to run Shaq off, right? Think about that if we're talking about roster construction. That's the one roster he had a real impact on. If you want to talk about his impact on a roster. But he wasn't, sitting with Mitch Kupchak breaking down tape. You know what I mean?
No.
He wasn't evaluating dudes. He wasn't looking at the cap. I mean, I mean, no offense, but I mean, what actually is Kobe going to do about changing the roster?
Well, like I'm like I said, I'm thinking more of the younger guys that are thriving, and we talked about this last week, that are thriving after leaving the Lakers.
Yeah, we definitely talked about that.
Yeah.
And if he had actually been involved, now some of those guys played with him, right? Some of the older young guys, whatever, actually spent a year with him at the end of his career. But the younger young guys, just grew up playing with Kobe on 2K or whatever. I mean, they don't have any real relationship with him. I mean, he'd come by the facility a couple of times a year, the same way he would show up other places and talk to people about passion and finding your why. And I mean, it's cool and everything, and make a speech for $100,000 at somebody's convention. I mean, all that's cool and everything, but that doesn't really do anything. I mean, I guess it does a little something, but it's not the same. Putting a team together, holding a team together, evaluating talent, those are full-time jobs. You can't drive up in your Lambo 4 times a year. I mean, I get what you're saying, but it doesn't really work that way.
Well, let's go to a more practical situation then. Okay. AD returns after 17 games.
Mm-hmm.
Can AD be captain, save a team for the Lakers?
Sort of, in that the way the team, I feel like I'm saying things I've said before. The team is old and thin. They lack depth and they lack young legs. They have talent, but all their best players are old. He's one of the younger old guys on the team, I guess, if that's that. He's not as old as some of the other players, I guess, if that's what we're driving at. But this team is not put together in a way that
younger old. I think
that's what he is.
I think, go ahead.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, if that's the best way I can think of describe him, he's a younger old guy. There's very few young guys on the team that play a major role, which is what you're just saying. I mean, they could really use a Brandon Ingram. They could really use a D'Angelo Russell. Man, could they use an Andrew Wiggins? I mean, there's a bunch of young cats that could be on the team that aren't.
Kyle Kuzma, maybe.
Right, because every time this team had a chance to decide about how they want to put the team together, they kept saying, "Oh, old. Oh yeah, let's go old." Like every time, and then when they got old, they said, "No, let's go older." So they're now the oldest team on average by almost a year and three, like over a year and a half, like almost a year, like a year and 3/4. Like team per player is it's like a year and 3/4 per player younger than they are. They're a very old team in a sport that punishes you at some point for being old. So, I mean, Anthony Davis is very talented and he's very good when he's healthy, and he's, a top 5 big man, which is both speaks to his talent and also to the dearth of really great big men. I mean, Jokic is a very good player, but if he were playing with, young Shaq and Hakeem in his prime and David Robinson and Tim Duncan, and I mean, he looked at differently. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just that we live really in a dearth of great big men. I mean, he's essentially a best value version of Dirk Nowitzki, right? Because Dirk was a little more athletic, and Jokic is probably a slightly better post defender than Dirk was, but the point I'm making is, if you were playing in a different era of basketball, we would look at Jokic differently, right? I mean, he's sort of like if Arvydas Sabonis had actually gotten to play his whole career here, right? Because by the time you got to see Sabonis, he was a shell of his former self. Sabonis in his prime was very much like, but once again, he was a little more athletic, young Arvydas Sabonis was a little more athletic than Jokic. So yes, I mean, there's only a handful of really good big men now left, right? I mean, Clint Capella is almost a top 5 big man. Like, that tells you what we're talking about. He's certainly top 8, and he's not really a complete player. You know what I mean? Like, if he was playing, in the era when, I mean, he's like an Otis Thorpe level player, right? But he's thought of as better than that because there's so few good big men.
I don't play as much, as I do fantasy football, but when you play fantasy basketball and you find out the value of these guys and the guys on the do not drop list compared to back in when you were watching real basketball or whatever, but
right. I mean, if you're a guy like Caldwell Jones, you've got to be cursing your luck. Like, oh, I was born too soon. I'd be a top 5 big man if I were born, another 30 years later. Yeah, I mean, the line has moved, and it has moved down. It's a great time for small forwards, though, right? We have a lot of great small forwards, and of course, small forwards are big. And I've seen some teams where their small forwards are actually taller, maybe not heavier, but taller than the power forward. Like, that's where we are now. I mean, I guess technically speaking, Kevin Durant is a small forward. I mean, the league is
I think that's what he's listed as
right. Yeah, and he's
shooting guard, small forward.
yeah, he's a small forward, and he's 6'10" and 7/8 or 6'10" and 3/4 or whatever, and with a super long wingspan. So the game has really become so wing centric, right? There are some teams where the forward is the primary ball handler. Obviously, the Lakers are a great example. There's a couple of teams where either the number one or number two ball handler on the team is a forward, as opposed to being, the two guard or whatever. I mean, so we've moved to a point in the game where we really de-emphasized certain players. There was a time, I mean, Karl Malone was a power forward. Think about that. He was a guy who was consistently an MVP candidate, and he was a power forward.
Power forward, yes.
That's unthinkable for someone who started watching basketball in, let's say, 2009, that you would have a power forward consistent, right? A consistent MVP candidate, right? So the game has moved obviously away from the paint, away from the pivot, and everyone's a ball handler, right? That's the other way the game has changed. Is that, I mean, anyone on some teams, anyone can. If you're Portland, anyone can be bringing the ball up. If you're the Jazz, if you're the Nuggets, anyone can bring the ball up. Everyone's a ball handler, So the Lakers are, as I said, an older team that is also built not really ideally for the game of now. They do have, some positionless players, whatever, but they don't really have the guys that match up best with the best players in the league right now. I don't like them. When you think about the superstars in the league right now, think about who matches up with them, right? When you're playing, I mean, if you're playing the Sixers, right? I mean, Dwight Howard can sort of slow down Joel Embiid, I guess. So that, I mean, that's kind of a thing. But I mean, certain players.
The Lakers are playing the 76ers tonight.
Right.
So
that was my point.
And not only that, but LeBron is not playing.
Right.
So now you have no LeBron.
Yep.
You have an AD that's playing limited minutes.
Yes. Right. So you're throwing a limited AD and a very old Dwight Howard at Joel Embiid, who is, once again, we talked about, a legit contender for MVP. I mean, they don't match up with teams that have guys like Devin Booker, because even when they had Rajon Rondo, who, was a terrific defender, but was getting long in the tooth, and they essentially replaced him with kind of nobody. In terms of, I mean, who's the great on-ball defender who can go get, elite level point guards, two guards, and maybe even smaller small forwards, right? The traditional size small forward, 6'5", 6'7", as opposed to Kevin Durant size guy. But
that guy is us. Like I said, he's not playing tonight, and he's 36 years old.
Yeah, well, that's not ideal. First of all, having a 36-year-old be your best on-ball defender seems short-sighted, I think is the term I might throw out there. That may not be what you
maybe we'll save that term when we talk about my Steelers. And my early birthday present. But anyway, right. I see Mike is here. So I did have, I had a couple things that I put in our email that I sent to everyone. And Mike wanted to respond to that. So I kept our Baseball Hall of Fame questions until Mike came in. How are you doing this evening, Mike?
Doing very good, sir. How are you doing, Bill?
I am doing extremely well. I hope you are as well.
Yes, sir. I'm doing pretty well. Thank you.
Well, before we get to the controversy, let's talk about the guy that got in, and there was only one, and that was Mr. David Ortiz.
Yep.
So, Bill, why don't you start our discussion of this year's Hall of Fame
Sure.
class of one?
So, do I launch into my rant about guys like Todd Helton and guys like Dick Allen, and I mean, or do we just sort of celebrate Big Papi? I mean, which are we doing?
Good question.
I ask you.
Oh,
You,
okay.
I
Okay,
didn't put,
fine.
I didn't
So,
put any
so
restraints on it.
here's what I'm
I
going to say
didn't
about
say,
David Ortiz.
know.
David Ortiz, well, one, he sort of broke the seal on the designated hitter thing, right? Though he briefly played a little first base and was bad at it with the Twins, and I remember him quite clearly as a very bad first baseman. He then, becomes essentially a DH, and Edgar Martinez was essentially a DH, but Big Papi becomes the first, really, I guess you could say, pure DH. Though he did play a little bit of first base, but no one thinks of Big Papi as a first baseman, especially anyone who saw him play first base. So, when you compare him to, Edgar Martinez was actually a decent third baseman, but he had bad knees. So that's what forced him to make the position change. He wasn't bad. He just was never healthy. His knees were bad, and so they moved into a position where he, basically just had to hit the ball and run enough. I don't know how much guys care about the numbers, but I mean he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. 55.3 WAR, 2,472 hits, 541 home runs, 286 lifetime batting average, which isn't amazing, but for a power hitter, it's not bad. 1,419 hits, 1,768 RBIs, and a sizzling 17 stolen bases, which means probably that the catcher dropped the ball trying to get the ball out of his mitt 17 times. He had a 562 slugging percentage, a 380 on base percentage for a 981 OPS, which is very solid. So he was a guy that also had a good batting eye, and he was a solid hitter. He wasn't an all-around player, obviously, as we just mentioned. He's the second DH to get in and the close to purist. I mean, Edgar Martinez, like I said, was a pretty good third baseman until his knees basically gave out. Even very, very healthy, very, very young David Ortiz was an absolute defensive liability at one of the more easy positions to play defensively. But he led the league in slugging percentages, in slugging percentage 286. He was a really good offensive player. He was a one-way player. I mean, there's no two ways around that. He compares roughly to guys like Fred McGriff, who's not in the Hall of Fame, Frank Thomas, who is, Manny Ramirez, who's not, Miguel Cabrera is, I guess, technically speaking, still playing. I shouldn't say that. He is still playing. But he's getting very close to the end of a fantastic career. And I would give the slight advantage to Cabrera, one, because he's a legitimately decent baseball. I mean, all around baseball. He plays, his position fairly well. And, has a higher OPS and higher batting average. Behind him in home runs. That's about the one place where Big Papi has a guy like Cabrera. But Cabrera's going to get in and should probably get on the first ballot or close to it. But yeah, he's essentially a similar player to guys like Bagwell, Palmeiro not in. Jim Thome is in. He's sort of in that bag of guys. And like I said, why Fred McGriff and Todd Helton aren't in? Please, someone answer that for me. Like, I don't get it. Once again, if you're comparing him to Big Papi, he's 2 points lower in batting average. He has 493 home runs, which is about 70 less than Papi. But he has more hits. He has slightly fewer RBIs, 72 stolen bases. Not like a speed guy, but at least he, didn't embarrass himself on the base pass. Slightly lower OPS, but once again, was a legitimate first baseman, was a solid defensive first baseman, above average, I would say, even defensive first baseman, which to me adds some additional value to him as a player that Papi obviously couldn't give you. I mean, I'm not angry that he's in the Hall of Fame, and I'm not disappointed that he's in the Hall of Fame. No, I mean, I'm fine with him being in the Hall of Fame, but there are players who are just as good or better who are still waiting. I guess that's the point I'm making about a guy like David Ortiz, and Manny Ramirez, as strange as he was and whatever else, is simply a better player, right? I mean, even if you don't want to get into the whole bonds or whatever discussion, Manny's a better player. I mean, they were teammates for a while, obviously. Manny ended up with a few fewer home runs, like very few, like a handful fewer, but 555, but more hits, 2,574 hits, higher batting average at 312, higher OPS, and 996 OPS. I don't know how else to put this. That's elite, right? I mean, you could throw a picnic and fry up 2 chickens and be able to feed everybody who has an OPS that high in the history of baseball. His numbers are outstanding. 1,331 RBIs, a not so scintillating 38 stolen bases. And Manny was an adventure in the outfield. He might make a great play. He might make a terrible play. Sort of an adventure as an outfielder, but still he played in the outfield and was, like I said, an adventure, but gave it to you, did that for you. But he's a 9-time Silver Slugger. Won a batting title, which Ortiz never did. World Series MVP. I mean, Manny's simply a better player than a guy like David Ortiz. So obviously it comes down to the whole, taint that's associated with guys that, even though Bonds never had a bad test, there was all that.
No, we're talking about David Ortiz.
Right. Okay. Back to Ortiz. So I'm with David Ortiz getting in. There's better players. I mean, I guess what I'm saying to wrap it all up, are there better players? I mean, heck, Gary Sheffield is a very similar player, right? And Sheff could field his position. Sheff was a 5-time Silver Slugger. Sheff won a batting title. He played shortstop. He played third base and right field, and was pretty good at all of them. His 907 OPS is not ludicrously off the charts like Manny's, but it's very good. 253 stolen bases, right? There's not many guys in the 500-250 club. Look that club up sometime. It's not a long list. There's not Willie Mays. It's a handful of dudes. It's not a bunch that are in the 500-250, right? 250 stolen bases, 500 home runs. That's a fairly small list. Slightly higher batting average at 292, 1,636 hits, 1,676 home runs. Poppy has him a little bit in home runs, and Sheffield basically has Poppy every place else. So, like I said, I'm fine with him getting in. There are better players who are still waiting, I guess is the point I was trying to make. Mm-hmm. Mike, anything to add?
Yeah, I think because you did an excellent job with that. I think the only thing that I probably would add is that I agree with you too that it was kind of weird that Big Poppy made the Hall of Fame, just because I was just like, well, really? And so recently, not that he's not deserving, but just so recent. And I'm like, well, there's a couple names that, we'll get into one of them, of course, but that are far more deserving. But I was just like, well, if there was anyone that was going to get in the Hall of Fame this year, I would say 2 players, Jeff Kent or Big Poppy. And it seemed to be Big Poppy to go ahead of Jeff Kent, which is kind of surprising because, hey, Jeff Kent should already be in the Hall of Fame. But they went with Big Poppy, and that's fine. He deserves it. I don't have a problem with him being in the Hall of Fame.
All right, gentlemen. Let's bring out the real meat here. Because it's been 10 times tried and 10 times failed. The big guy himself, Mr. Barry Bonds, has been once again denied entrance. I believe 10 times is as many as you can. Now,
until you roll over to the seniors committee, yes. There's a few. This is our last chance, or was our last chance as a regular inductee. Yeah.
Him and what's the guy that
Roger Clemens is his last attempt.
Okay. Okay.
non.
But I call him Big Head Big because
He has a big head.
but not. You see, when he left Pittsburgh on the plane, he got on the plane. His head was 6 7/8. When he got to San Francisco, it was 7 3/4. I mean, isn't that one of the, yeah. Anyway,
Well, I mean that's not a steroid
even
thing.
though
That's HGH, baby. That's steroid doesn't make your bones bigger, but HGH might.
my
I mean,
point
if we're
is,
being real.
Falco, for sure.
my point is, he was twice the man in San Francisco that he was in Pittsburgh. And
but he was a Hall of Fame guy in Pittsburgh. I mean,
he, quite possibly, but he would have been 100 pounds lighter, and his forearms would have been much smaller. I'm not sure if he could have hit that many in the lake. I'm not saying he couldn't have hit them out of the park, but I mean, out of the infield. I mean, in the home run, but I don't know whether he'd have been hitting them out of the stadiums. That's my.
I know what you're saying.
But anyway, and once again, I do have a partiality toward the city of Pittsburgh. And the last World Series that I went to, of course, you guys, well, Bill, you might remember it, was the Orioles and the Pirates. So, I kind of go back to those old days, and maybe it's I hold a grudge because he left the city of Pittsburgh, even though was it just before that or just after that we won not only a Super Bowl, but we also won the Stanley Cup.
Yep.
And also we won the World Series, as I said.
Right. So, and if the Tampa Bay Rays had done their act together, Tampa could have done the same thing. 2 out of those 3.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm saying that, hat size matters. And that's the reason why he didn't get it. But anyway, like I said, maybe it's because of our pettiness of him leaving Pittsburgh. But Mike, you really want? I can see you over there chopping at the bit. Go ahead.
I am chopping at the bit just because I'm a Giants fan and I'm a huge Barry Bonds fan. So it's just been one spurn after another, and I get it. Not only is it obvious that he did HGH or whatever steroids, something he did something right. Not only that, but you can make the case. Well, Mike Piazza also did stuff, and so many other players did stuff that are like in the Hall of Fame. So you could say that's the case, but I disagree. I think, as I mentioned, those players are in. So what's the difference, right? So there's got to be a difference, and the difference is that Barry Bonds treated the media like, SHT, right? And I think if he was more friendly with the media, if he was personable, if he wasn't just a jackass, then he would be in the Hall of Fame. But they're using that, to be more strong in HGH or whatever as an excuse or as a catalyst to keep him out. So that's what it is. It's just what it is, and it's horrible that he has to wait to the Veterans Committee to get in because this is a first ballot Hall of Famer, and they're just not treating him as such. And he dug his own grave too. I'm not putting it at all in the media. He did it himself too. He's very much just as responsible. So hopefully he'll get in now that it'll be passed on to the Veterans Committee.
Bill, when you burn bridges, I mean, but your thoughts on Barry being spurned again?
So there have been lots of really prickly, difficult personalities in the history of baseball. Tyrus Raymond Cobb wasn't exactly. I mean, I could do this for a while with guys.
Piazza,
but
I mean,
it's a long list of guys that I could do this with. Cap Hansen. I mean, I could do this all day. But getting to what's just been said about Bobby Bonds' son, he's a guy, and this is going to we'll see how this plays out. I mean, Kurt Schilling is another person that people bring up a lot. You know, his fascination with certain things and collecting Nazi memorabilia and whatever.
Yeah, I think that's a big factor on that one.
Yeah, so there are people who think that that's worked against him. And I mean, it doesn't.
A lot of Jewish writers, they collect, Nazi memorabilia.
I mean, right. I mean, that doesn't help. I mean, I'll say that much. It doesn't help. Like, that's not going to make someone who was on the fence say, you know what? Yeah, that's the guy I want to vote for. The guy who has, Hitler's spittoon. So, yeah, I mean, there's things that certainly work against a guy like Kurt Schilling. And, people talk about his politics, but it's not just his politics. I mean, it's part of his actual persona. He is a person that definitely has rubbed some people the wrong way. Like, he's definitely roughed up some people's rubles. So yeah, it doesn't help you. And there are people who say, remove the sports writers from the process and only let Hall of Famers vote on who gets in the Hall of Fame and whatever. I mean, there's enough living Hall of Famers that I'm sure would be willing to serve on a panel that you could do something like that. The issue is, just because someone's a great baseball player doesn't mean they watch all the other great baseball players, right? It is a baseball writer's job to watch baseball, not to play it, while a baseball player's job is to play baseball, not watch it. So just because, like I said, I mean, it gets to be a very slippery slope about trying to take it away from the sports writers. But I wouldn't mind if there was a blend, if X percentage, if 60% of those in the room were, writers and historians, and the other 40% were, ball players. I mean, that'd be fine with me. But the process will forever, I mean, no matter what you do, the process will forever be flawed because human beings are flawed. Unless you want to just run an algorithm and have it spit out who's a Hall of Famer, which you could do, actually. We have the technology with supercomputing to analyze all the previous Hall of Famers, tell you exactly what a Hall of Famer's profile is at each position, and just feed the data in. I mean, we could do that, but they've chosen not to do it that way. They've chosen to put it in the hands of fallible humans. And when you do that, you get what you got.
And I think even if you involved baseball players, there wasn't many people, especially on the Giants, that like Barry Bonds. So
I mean, Bonds and Kent were famous for, what's the word I'm looking for? MFing, Michael Fox trotting each other. Would pick a term.
Yeah, definitely that. And then Jeff Kent, like you mentioned, and Will Clark.
Right. Clark.
So yeah,
Clark had been the man until Barry showed up. Yeah.
Well, it's for me, it's karma, but we'll kind of leave our discussion at that because there's not a whole lot of Hall of Fame to talk about, right?
No.
Well, one guy.
That's all you got.
One guy. Okay, so it's been some interesting things happened since the last time we talked in the NBA. I mean, excuse me, the NFL. And there's been a lot of changes, especially around your way, Mike, in a couple ways, on both fronts, really. I mean, but I'm going to start with the University of Michigan because it seems like the Ravens have fired Mr. Martindale, and it said, rumor has it, that the leading candidate is going to be from Michigan.
Yep.
Mike, what's your thoughts on that?
I think a couple things. So Mike McDonald was a former DC in Baltimore and was let go. And I think that's one of the reasons why he went to Michigan. He's only been there for a season. And John Harbaugh said, hey, this guy is really good. you might want to attach him to your staff. So Jim said, okay, I'll do so. And that's what happened. And he did really great job in Michigan. Fantastic job. I mean, a lot of it had to do with how great the players were, because there's going to be a couple first rounders coming out of Michigan. But he did a fantastic job. With that said, there's an opening now back in Baltimore. So, I see it as just almost a freeway, a turnoff. You know, he gets fired from Baltimore, turns off on the freeway, and goes the other direction to Michigan. Now Baltimore wants it back, so he's going to turn around and head back to Baltimore.
But you know, now there's a empty spot in Michigan.
True.
And Bill,
Yep.
I'm gonna kind of throw this back at you, because you always bring up this thing about nepotism.
Yep.
And the first thing that
Matt Eberflus has a sister who's married to a McCaskey, right? It's rampant.
You know, but the first thing that, you know, Mike said was, well, you know, he called Jim, and Jim said, and now he's back.
You should hire this guy. Yeah, right.
You know, I'm not saying that he's not qualified, but, you know.
Right. I mean, we're not saying that Nathaniel Hackett isn't qualified just because his dad is Paul. We're not saying that Kyle Shanahan isn't qualified just because his dad is Mike. We're not saying that McVay isn't qualified just because his grandfather was John. I mean, it's rampant. Like, I could do this for about half an hour, just going through by blood and marriage. Scott Ireland isn't qualified. I'm not saying he's not qualified, though he might not be, but just because he married Bill Parcells' daughter. I mean, I could do this for a while. The point is that it's not only not discouraged, it is in fact encouraged. They encourage nepotism in the NFL. They want to, you know, it's basically encouraged. Also, a name to watch out for is Demetrius Sumler, the cornerbacks coach for San Diego State University. Not a big name, but a really good coach. A really good coach. And the safeties, speaking of nepotism, the safeties coach at SU is really good, but it's Kyle Hoke, who just happens to have a bit of a connection to Brady Hoke, his dad. But getting back to what we're talking about, there are certainly some really strong candidates that I could see landing there. And obviously, somebody's going to blow on a call to guys like Vic Fangio, right? Fangio has run a similar system before. He's extremely respected, especially amongst defensive minds. And he's one of the more respected defensive minds in the NFL. People may not be sold on him as a head coach, but people are 100% sold on him as a defensive coordinator. I believe. So it comes down to if you want to go young or want to go old. Now, when it comes to offensive coordinators, people pretty much always want to go young for whatever reason nowadays. Oh, you're more than 32? We got to think about it, right? Everybody likes super young offensive coordinators for whatever reason nowadays. But for defensive coordinators, they don't seem to mind as much if you've got a little, you know, snow on the chimney, as they say. You know, they're okay with hiring DC in his 50s or even his 60s. You know, I mean, frankly, Wade Phillips should get a call anytime there's a defense coordinator, unless he says he doesn't want to coach anymore. Because for whatever reason, people like experience when it comes to defensive coordinators, and they like inexperience when it comes to offensive coordinators, because that's the world in which we live. But there's several really good, like I said, really good what do you call it? Candidates, that's the word I'm looking for, that I would consider, you know, if it were up to me. And, you know, it seems like just yesterday, Gerard Mayo was playing, and, you know, he's a guy that's getting some head coach consideration, which, like I said, to me seems insane, because it seems like 5 minutes ago he was a player. But amongst some of the other guys I think might get a phone call, right, when it comes to replacing the outgoing Coach McDonald. Another guy that, once again, I would blow in a call to, I would take a look at Trey Scott, the D-line coach at Georgia, who I think is ready to be a defensive coordinator. They have co-defensive coordinators at Georgia. Glenn Schumann is another guy who I think, once again, depending on what you have to say, would at least be willing to listen to an opportunity if you wanted to throw an enormous pile of cash his way. And somebody will eventually throw an enormous pile of cash his way. It's probably sooner rather than later. There's a few other guys I could name. I don't know. How much time do you want to spend?
Mike, you got any candidates for DC at Michigan?
I don't know if there's any candidates at this point. I'm sure they're looking. They're probably waiting on what Jim Harbaugh is going to finalize and do, and then work from there, I would imagine.
Well, it's kind of funny you mentioned that because, well, talk about what happened with the Bears, Mike. They hired former DC from the Colts, Mr. How did you pronounce that again, Bill? Elderbus?
Matt Eberflus?
Eberflus.
It's classic. It's classic Dutch pronunciation.
Eberflus. Okay.
Eberflus. Eberflus.
Mike, I'm sure as a Colt fan, you're kind of familiar with his work. What do you think about him as a head coach of the Bears? We kind of thought that maybe you have Justin Fields there now. Maybe you would go with an offensive guy. What's your thoughts here?
Yeah, he got a lot of attention last year as well for head coaching spots and just never got hired. And rightfully so. He came into the Colts last year as a defense coordinator, and the Colts haven't been as good before that. So Matt Eberflus really changed the whole dynamic as far as the Colts defense. I mean, obviously, when you get, players like DeForest Buckner and, those kind of athletes, it really helps. But he really did a solid job with this defense, a lot of soft zone coverage kind of thing. So he was going to be, I guess, snatched away from the Colts. It was close that he didn't get it last year. This year, I was just like, yeah, he's gone. And so there's definitely nepotism there, as you mentioned before. But I think we'll see what he does. They're going to really have to hire someone that is a quarterback guru, considering they went with a defensive coordinator with Matt Eberflus, and you have Justin Fields and a couple other, Darnell Mooney and Montgomery. I mean, these guys are young athletes on that offensive side, so they will have to hire someone that can really do a job there, since Eberflus is going to be restricted with defensive-minded coach.
What's your thoughts on that, Bill? I mean, like I said, we all said here on the show that we thought that they would go with an offensive-minded guy.
No, we didn't all say that.
Okay.
I remember I predicted that the family connection would bring Eberflus in. I said he had a sister married to one of the McCaskey boys.
I remember that. Yeah, last week you said that.
So no, we didn't all say that. One of us said it would be Eberflus.
I remember you talking. That's how kind of the nepotism talk sort of started with.
It is. That was the point I was making. But speaking of people, sort of Colts connections and people should get a call, Alphonza Pep Hamilton should be called immediately, if not sooner. I mean, a short list of the quarterbacks with whom he's worked and had success: Andrew Luck twice, Justin Herbert, right? Who's the other one?
Is he not coaching somewhere right now?
Yes, but he's a quarterbacks coach with the Chargers. But if you throw an enormous pile of cash at him, you might be able to get him to leave.
Oh, he's with the Texans.
Oh, sorry, Texans. That's what it was. Texans. quarterback coach of the Texans. But yes.
So is that why Davis Mills looks so good this year?
Yes, because he has Pep Hamilton.
Yeah.
Hamilton is amazing. That's the one I was trying to remember. Sorry, Davis Mills, right? So think about this, right?
Well, he had Herbert last year too. So yeah.
He had Andrew Luck, right? He had Andrew Luck, both at Stanford and then his rookie season and second year, I think, with the Colts. He had success and quite a bit of it with, Justin Herbert, right? Who unexpectedly has to run out there and start because Dr. Needle got a little too excited with Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah.
And then he takes Davis Mills, who's a third-round draft pick, and, because of what ends up happening with Deshaun Watson, gets him ready to go, and he gets better throughout the entire. Now, some of that's due to Davis Mills' terrific work ethic, but Alphonso Pep Hamilton deserves his credit as well. He's one of the best. To me, your two best opportunities are Pep Hamilton or Jim Caldwell. Once again, do you want to go middle-aged or you want to go slightly older? That's really the only choice that you're making there, because both those guys would kill it in terms of, they're both great at quarterback development.
Yeah.
Now, guys, as before both of you came on, and I was having a few words with the audience, I reminded everyone that my birthday was next Friday. But this morning I woke up and I received the birthday present that I've been waiting for 2 years. Big Ben is gone. Big Ben has officially retired. Now, I do, I'm kind of like Bill, if not Big Ben, who? But certainly not the two guys that we got backing him up.
No.
Oh, sir.
But as I said, and I've been saying for the last 2 years plus, we should have been ready for this transition, and we should have gotten rid of Big Ben and that big contract 2 years ago. Especially after we found out that we weren't going to be keeping Mason Randolph. So we've been kind of shuffling that third spot in between, now we have Haskins there, whom we also know is not ready. Guys, although, as I said, I celebrate his retirement. I'm sure he's going to be a Hall of Famer at some point. But
at some point he's going to he'd be whisked right in the Hall of Fame. He's not going to.
Well, it is, I have, once again, this is kind of like, it's not as rampant in football as it is in baseball, but here once again, the Big Ben is going in based upon his record, not upon Big Ben, the person. So,
right.
I do celebrate and congratulate him on what he has done with the Steelers, 2-time Super Bowl champion, Bill, Big Ben's retirement, let's celebrate his career, but where do the Steelers go from there?
Well, I think somewhere in the first 4 rounds of the draft, probably towards the latter of the 4, like 3rd or 4th round, maybe even the 2nd. Maybe it all depends on who's there. If when they pick in the 2nd, if Carson Strong's there, I would hope they would go ahead and snatch up Carson Strong. I think they're going to bring in one of the younger veterans as well, one of the cheaper, younger veteran quarterbacks on the market as well. So I could see them adding a young veteran, giving, Haskins his chance to, if he's going to make the big jump forward, to make the big jump forward in terms of development and be in the fight as well. But they've got to do something, right? You can't just stand pat. You've got to have a real quarterback competition. Like, people say quarterback competition, a lot, and 3 times out of 5, it's, fake. They've already know who they're going to go with. And, they're just trying to make it look like, you have to earn it, blah, blah, blah. 2 times out of 5, it's a legit competition. This needs to be one of those 2 times out of 5 legit quarterback competitions where somebody wins it. Because, frankly, the early answer, like the answer right out of the box, probably isn't even available to them. But drafting and developing is something that the Steelers are good at, and I'm hoping that's what they'll do. Draft and develop, and then, if you want to bring in a bridge quarterback, you could do that.
So, Mike, Bill says, picking up somebody in I think he said the 3rd round. Do the Steelers
somewhere in the 2nd to the 4th, yeah.
Do the Steelers trade that number 17 draft pick?
It all depends on how close quarterbacks. There's only probably 2 right now that could probably go in the 1st round, maybe 3. So it all depends on what that's like for them. But yeah, I if you can't get Kenny Pickett or Carson Strong or I don't know who the 3rd guy would be, but if you can't get any of those, then you're probably looking at that middle round to develop somebody and get a bridge quarterback, which I think they're going to do. They're going to go and get like a Jimmy Garoppolo or something to that effect, and then draft someone in hopes they turned out well. And if they don't, then they'll just wait till the next round or next draft and find out who's available for them at that
time. The Broncos have hired Packers offensive coordinator
Nathaniel Hackett
as their new head coach. Mike, what's your thoughts there? Is this an incentive for Rodgers to maybe change addresses? Or, the Broncos are in need of a quarterback. Do they go for a QB in the 1st round?
I think definitely that's part of it is the Hackett situation. I think they're definitely trying to entice some more Aaron Rodgers in with that. Is it a big piece of cheese for the mouse? No, it's a little piece of cheese, but it's definitely a piece of cheese. As far as quarterback, yes, they definitely need a quarterback, but Teddy Bridgewater was quarterback last year. Will be a quarterback this year. They're just this quarterback class is just not very strong. And it's 1 or 2 guys, maybe a 3rd. After that, it's total developmental.
What's your thoughts on that, Bill?
On the quarterback class?
Well, no. The Broncos hiring
Hackett. I think they liked Nathaniel Hackett, and I think as a extra added bonus, they're kind of hoping that maybe, just maybe, that will make Aaron Charles Rodgers at least seriously consider. And obviously, we talked on previous shows about the fact that his current lady friend is a Coloradan and has a home there, or not there, but in Colorado, not in Denver proper. He said before that he likes that part of the country. Plus, now that we know he's sort of a, whatever. He might fit in culturally more than I imagined. So, frankly, he's going to go to a team that he thinks is ready to win. Denver will have to do something with that roster to convince him, because the guy's not going to play that much longer. He's not going to pull a Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. and play until he's 44 or 45. That's not him. He's going to play another couple years. And if he does manage to win a Super Bowl, I can virtually guarantee he's out. Like, once he wins that Super Bowl, you can warm up the bus.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about him, a little bit more about him a little further down the line. But right now, we're just talking about the Broncos hiring Hackett.
Right. Well, Nathaniel Hackett, once again, is the son of Paul Hackett. He's been around football literally since his conception. And so, which we see a lot with these guys. A lot of these guys are, like I said, you guys who were ball boys in camp, and then by the time they got done with college, They, spent a year as a GA someplace, and then boom, straight into quality control. And then from quality control to being an assistant at, one of the positions, and then from that to a coordinator, and then from that to, it happens quickly with these guys who are the sons of NFL coaches. I mean, Jeff Fisher's son, no offense, but I'm sure it helped to be Jeff Fisher's son. I'm sure it helped to be Steve Belichick. I mean, I'm sure it helped to be Kyle Shanahan. It helps. But yes, I think he's a bright young coach. I think he will get the offense at least turned around. At least see what happens with the defense, which was, good but not great.
Bill, Quinn has said that he's not interested in leaving Dallas. He's content being the defense.
Yeah, that's his way of saying, I don't like that particular job.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Well, Sean Payton has also walked away from the Saints. But
because he knows how to read the salary cap.
Yes. But I also think that he's too strong a personality to be a yes man for Jerry. So I'm not sure, where the
Oh yeah. No. Dallas. He's not going to Dallas. You know where he's going? He's going to the booth, baby. Easy money, at least for a year.
Well, yeah, but there are now 7 jobs left with head coaching for head coaches. Bill, what job do you think is the best job?
The best of the remaining jobs?
Yes.
Okay. That's a good question. I mean, the Denver job is somewhat attractive. One, because they don't really have an owner. Well, they have a bunch of that's complicated. I guess they have a bunch of owners, technically speaking. When Pat Bowlen was incapacitated, he sort of divided up. It's sort of like the story of is it Caparushes? Back from like 3rd grade, about the king who tries to divide up his kingdom amongst his daughters. Well, the point is that there's a bit of a power struggle going on right now in Denver. We'll see who wins. But that's a team that doesn't look like it needs a whole lot. I mean, obviously they got to figure the quarterback situation, add a little bit of talent on each side of the ball. They have a very solid wide receiver group. The offensive line's not bad. The tight ends are young and I think still on the upswing in terms of their careers. Obviously, they're missing Von Miller because you can't not miss a guy like Von Miller. That's he's a Hall of Famer. They probably still need to
we'll talk about him a little later on.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, my point is, one good draft class could get this team into the playoffs with the right coach, right? So it comes out if you think of the right coach. The Raiders' job is interesting because they are interviewing and they did interview Rich Bisaccia, but that's a playoff team. I definitively can prove it because they were in the playoffs.
Yeah. So the question is, what's the best job?
Well, that's what I'm answering. So
you can't have 2 best jobs.
Well, I didn't say Denver job was the best job. I'm just breaking them down. But I don't love the Giants job, right?
No.
There's a big hole that you got to dig out of in New York.
Yeah.
The one good thing is if you go there and you get to 9 and 8, you might be coach of the year. I guess that's the one sort of inducement. Minnesota's another really challenging situation there. I'm not in love with that one. Miami's another team that's pretty close. Like Miami and to me, it's really between Miami and the Raiders. And I guess I'll go with Miami only because they're in a weaker division. There's a lot going on in the division where
the Bills, the Patriots. twice
Well, I
a year.
mean, the Bills are a very good football team. The Patriots are kind of smoke and mirrors, James. I'm just going to tell you the God's honest truth. There's a lot of things.
They're just smoke and mirrors, but they smoked and mirrored their way to the playoffs.
They did smoke and mirrors. Right. Once again, the Raiders gutted their way to the playoffs with a slightly better roster, frankly, than the Patriots. Sorry. So the Raiders have a slightly better roster than the Patriots. Like, that tells you something. The Raiders have a slightly better roster than the Patriots. I'll say it one last time. The Raiders have a slightly better roster than the Patriots. The wide receivers in New England are still a who's who of who, right? A bunch of guys who are either semi-busts, guys who should be third or fourth receivers, or guys who, they're literally guys who wouldn't start on almost any other team in the league, with maybe one exception. And he would still be a number one, right? He would be a number 2 or 3. They don't have a single guy who'd be a number 1 wide receiver on any other team on that roster right now. Their offensive line is solid because the Patriots always have a solid offensive line. The defensive line isn't quite what it used to be. I like Matt Judon, but he shouldn't be the guy. He should be the other guy. They don't have
But then again, we know the Patriots' job is not going to be open anyway. So,
well, I'm not talking the Patriots' job. I'm talking about, since you brought up them, being smoking.
You were saying, no, I brought it up when you were saying that that they were in an easy conference.
I didn't say easy. I said easier.
Easier. Okay.
I mean, no offense to any of the teams in the NFC East, but none of them are the Chiefs. The Chiefs are better than all of those teams. By whatever way you want to measure, the Chiefs
we're going to talk about them later on too.
Right, I get it, but I'm just saying I would rather be, if you're choosing between the West and the East. Come on now.
Well, so you still haven't told us who's the best job?
I finally landed on. I told you, I did. I said when I said I picked the Dolphins, I said it was because they were. And that's when you jumped on me about.
No,
remember all that?
No,
do you not remember that exchange we had?
Well, I guess it was because of the reason that you said. But anyway, okay. So you're going with the Dolphins job, Mike. What job?
And then you jumped on me.
So, Mike, what job do you think is the best, or do you concur with Bill? That's the Dolphins job.
So, quick clarifying question: is this what I speculate a head coach would want, or what fits my personality and what I would want?
This is for the head coaching jobs that are available now. Which one do you think is the best? The best job for the best coach available out there right now. If you were the best, if you were the head coach of anywhere, and these 7 teams called you, which one would you consider the best job? Might not be the highest paying job, but which one would you consider the best job?
So I'm not going to go too far away from Bill and take the Jacksonville Jaguars job. You have Trevor Lawrence as a quarterback there. Young Travis Etienne is there. A very solid offense as well. So there are parts there, but I don't know if you can pass up a Trevor Lawrence and be going there and plus the division is pretty soft as well. I mean, it's not, you got Houston there. They're not really all that dominant. Tennessee was totally just more lucky than good, as we saw. And the Colts are a solid team, but it's not a really brutal division that you're going to have to fight for and scratch for to get. So, yeah, I think it would be. Plus, you don't have to pay taxes because you're in Florida. So, win all the way around.
Mike, I don't know whether that was a football answer or a capitalist answer. No taxes.
No taxes.
It's like, So, are you loading up the family anytime soon?
No, my family's already there.
I don't know. We kind of lost Bill there for a minute.
I just had a little bit of a situation trying to prevent something from falling behind me. But yeah, I'll finish fixing that later.
Okay, so I'm surprised that neither one of you took the Vikings job.
It's too cold for me.
Well, I talked about the Vikings job a little bit, and the good news is, once again, it's in a fairly winnable division, right? The Packers are going to be what seems like at least a somewhat of a rebuild mode. The Bears are still a year or two away, unless something magical happens. But I believe they're still another year or two away. And, so when you're looking at the Packers, you're looking at the Bears, you're looking at, well, I mean, there's no great team, right? I mean, if the Packers are indeed rebuilding, then there's no great team. I mean, Detroit is, I think, headed in the right direction, but they're another couple. Like, everybody's a couple of years away. There's nobody you think, oh man, they're a juggernaut. So that's the good thing about the Vikings job. But the Vikings also are a few years away. They're another team that has some really hard decisions to make contract-wise. They've paid a lot of money to one player. And that's not always a bad thing. I mean, if it's, Patrick LeVon Mahomes, then you pay him whatever it takes. And of course, they were smart the way they structured that contract, because a lot of that money is deferred. Now they've been paying it forever, almost like not quite Bonilla style, but close. I mean, a lot of that money, he'll be getting paid for a while. But so they sort of backdated or pushed back some of that cap hit. But that's a lot of money to play to Kirk Cousins, and you can't really, and you can't move on from him. Like, you can't. Like, you're married to him basically for the next few years. They have a really good wide receiver group. They have a terrific running back, and then after that, the pickings start to get pretty slender pretty quickly. They've got an okay pass rush. Their secondary used to be great. Now it's just good. Their linebacking core is their best linebackers are their oldest linebackers, and at least one, if not two of them, are gone in free. I think Farr is almost guaranteed to be gone in free agency. We'll see what happens with Eric, the other one, Eric. See him in mind, the shorter of the two. But I think he also might be a cap casualty. So there's some things they got to figure out. But
Bill, I'm glad you're talking about the cap, because let's talk about the Packers and their salary cap. Now, what are they, 44 million over the cap already?
Right. Well, once again, that will change dramatically if Aaron Charles Rodgers leaves.
Well, now, are they going to re-sign Devontae Adams? Are they going to let him go to free agency? And I mean,
So my understanding is that they would like to re-sign him, but the money has to come from somewhere. So they need what they really need. Here's the problem. The money they need to sign Devontae Adams would then quite possibly become available if they could work a trade to get rid of Rodgers. The problem is, if that happens, Devontae Adams is likely to want to move on as well. And free agency allows them to do just that. So they're in a sort of classic Baxter's Procrustes kind of situation, right? So the Procrustean bed, for those who aren't big fans of Greek mythology, was named after this sort of wicked king Procrustes, who had a bed. And if you fit the bed perfectly, you were fine, right? But if you were too short for the bed, he'd have you stretched on the rack to the right length for the bed. If you were too short for the bed, he'd have the lower part of your legs cut off, right? So, yeah. So
you mean if you were too tall?
You read some more Greek mythology, which I'm sure is why you wanted to come on a sports show. So the situation they're in is sort of a classic sort of, they pinned themselves in a very interesting corner, because unless you can convince Devontae Adams that Jordan Love has figured it all out, or you've got this amazing plan B at quarterback, one or the other, then he's likely to be looking to leave. So you've got a real challenge there and then you can't pay him unless Aaron Rodgers leaves. So yeah, good luck with figuring that one out there, Packers.
Mike?
Yeah, as far as the Devontae Adams goes, I think he's probably going to get tagged. They just can't lose everybody and expect to compete, especially when you don't have much there in the first place. I mean, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Alan Lazard. I mean, who are these guys? So if you lose Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, you're in big trouble. So I do think Aaron Rodgers is on his way out, but Devontae Adams will be tagged.
Mike, the Packers blow their lead as the number one, and their ranking as number one. I mean, all they had to do was win 2 home games. That was it.
Yeah.
This is the second year that Jimmy G has knocked Aaron out of.
I think it's the third, right? Third.
Yeah, right. He's 0-3 against the 49ers in the playoffs.
Yeah, but only 2 years against Jimmy G, right?
2 was right, because the other year it was
the guy before Jimmy G.
Right. Was it Melton? Was it? Hold on, let me think.
Well, Colin Kaepernick was.
Yeah,
I think
Kaepernick. There we go.
Yeah,
Who ran for 200 and whatever yards or whatever. That's right.
Yeah, it was Kaepernick. So I mean, and then he got on the podcast today that he usually goes on and was talking about how proud he was of his season.
Was that the Pat McAfee show?
Right. Yeah. I mean, once again, you're sitting at home watching the playoffs. I mean, I understand all the MVP talk and all that, but Mike, you're sitting at home.
Well, it's not just
proud.
He won, right? I'm not going crazy. Didn't he win the MVP?
I don't think it's been given out yet.
It hasn't been. It hasn't been officially announced yet. I mean, once again, like we were talking about before, those sports writers are the ones that predominantly, it's not just. But anyway, Mike, what do you? I mean, he's proud of his season.
I would be not proud of my season. I wouldn't have phrased it that way. I mean, I think you should be positive. You don't want to be negative. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers even cares to be positive or negative because he sure likes to spit negativity. So, if I was sort of in that position of Aaron Rodgers, I would be like, we gave a great job. I was happy. I would say probably I was proud of my season. But that I wouldn't end it with that. I would say, but I was very disappointed in how I performed against the 49ers, and we had a great opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. And if I performed better, we would probably still have a chance in this NFC Championship game. So I want to do better. But just to leave it as I'm proud of this season is as you mentioned, there's this situation where the Packers were probably the best team in the NFL, or at least very close to being the best team in the NFL, and you lose to the 49ers, who are the 6th seed. So you can't really be proud of your entire season. You can only be proud of a portion of that season.
Now, Bill, I know I'm being, critical here. Because, I mean, if it hadn't have been for that defensive turnover,
Well, more importantly, I mean, literally 10 points from special teams, right? Between the blocked field goal and a blocked touchdown, that's 10 points. Without those 2 plays, they win the game, and we're not even having this discussion. But and you said negativity. Well, not when it comes to COVID testing. There, he's positive.
Yeah, that's true. He's very positive when it comes to COVID testing.
But he's been immunized. So
yes, right. It's all natural fruits and berries.
Bill, the Titans, they sacked uh, Burrows 9 times.
It's a modern playoff record. I mean,
9 times.
since
I
the
mean,
sack has been a thing. Now, frankly,
Bill,
go back before the sack was
there are teams that don't have 9 sacks in their season.
right. And it's, like I said, since the sack has been an official, so from 1983 forward, that is the NFL record. Now, I've dug into some research. In the playoffs previous to the sack being an official record, that probably wouldn't be the record if you were to go back before the days when sacks were official. There was a playoff game. In fact, the last playoff game that the Lombardi-led Packers lost was a game against the Detroit Lions when they had their fearsome foursome, of course, right? With Sam Williams and Darius McCord and Alex Karras, and of course the late great Roger Brown. Roger Brown by himself had 7 sacks in that game. So that might well be the record. They beat the living daylights out of Bart Starr in that game. But yeah, in the modern era, since the sack has been an official statistic, that is the record.
Some of you might want to go back and look up at Google Bart Starr, but anyway, yeah, but Bill, in spite of that record number of sacks, they couldn't overcome Tannehill's 3 interceptions.
Yeah, well, it's hard to overcome 3 interceptions. One's the pick 6. I mean, I don't know if you've ever studied other teams that have overcome pick 6s before. Sure, it happens. Even in the playoffs, it's happened a few times. But the teams that win, and have survived a pick 6 are the distinct minority. I think it's something like 82 point something percent to 20, like 27.3 or something percent of the time. If you're going to win if you have a pick 6, but it's not in your favor. I mean, you're going to lose. No, that'd be less, Bill. That's more like 17 point something percent. So essentially 17 point something times out of 100. If you throw a pick 6, you're going to win, which means that 80 something percent of that time, usually you lose if you throw a pick 6. Like the number, that's not in your favor. Throwing your pick 6 is not a good way to go about trying to win a football game.
Well, the point is, should the Titans be in the market for a quarterback?
I mean, every team that doesn't have an elite quarterback is at least partially in the market for a quarterback, but use their market. So let's stick with the market concept. So market forces and market constraints mean that, 1, you have to be able to afford this quarterback. That's the first thing. 2, that quarterback has to be available, right? So are either of those things true? So even if they were to cut Tannehill, and he would be a significant but not crippling cap hit, right? But you have to survive that cap hit. And then after that said cap hit, do you have enough cap space left to sign an elite quarterback? Well, the short answer is no. Now, you could do some things to free up more cap. So you could make it happen. But as of now, they don't have that. But could you interest a guy like Aaron Charles Rodgers and then somehow free up the money? Possibly. That's possible. It's not one of the places where he's previously mentioned being interested, but it's a good team. Unlike the Bengals, they have a decent offensive line. They have a terrific running game, obviously. And a decent enough defense, though. They give up some big plays, but it certainly doesn't help when you have 3 interceptions, including a pick 6. Just something not something that helps to highlight the strength of your defense.
What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
They're pretty locked in with Tannehill this year. They have a potential out in 2023.
Right.
But yeah, I think he had a bad year. It was awful. It was reminded me of how he was when he was with the Miami Dolphins and Adam Gase. It was just really, really bad. But the 2 years prior to this year, he was pretty solid. So every player, no matter who you are, is going to have a down season, and perhaps this was it. So I don't think they'll look or consider a quarterback this year. They'll give him one more shot, and if he's just as bad or doesn't really improve as much as they would like to, then he's gone after this season.
Right. Next year, the answer might be yes. This year, it's almost impossible, Jay.
Yeah, it's a pretty steep.
It would be difficult. Yeah.
It'd be I think 30. They're saying 38 million against the cap.
Woo!
Mike, we all thought that we'd be seeing an Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady matchup here.
Well, I didn't pick the Tampa Bay. I picked the Rams to win.
Yes, you did.
But
do you think Tom's going to walk away this year, Mike?
No. I think he'll give it at least one more season. He's too egotistical and narcissistic.
Throw Petty in there too.
Yeah, Petty to sort of just walk away after this kind of game, after this contest, where he looked just awful. So it's one of those games where he was embarrassed. He was embarrassed by his play. So it's going to be, how do I get back to it? And he's still good. I mean, he's not someone that at that age you'd think, okay, he's toast. And I think a lot of that happened was good. The fact that he's, went to Tampa Bay and doesn't have to deal with the frigid weather in New England. And as we know, as we get older, those bones are much more frigid and much more cold and easier to break. So I think he gives it one more shot. And if they win the Super Bowl, he's definitely done. But if they don't, maybe another year after that. But I think it's in the 1 or 2 years.
I think it's 1 year, and I think no matter what happens next year, he's done. Just because I think he sort of made a promise to his family. Let me do this 1 more year, please. Just please give me 1 more year, and then I'll come home.
The only thing that I might disagree with there, Mike, is when you said he was embarrassed by his performance. The man came from 27 down, and they had to kick a last-minute field goal in order to beat him. I don't know. If Aaron was proud of his performance,
yeah, Tom Brady must be enthralled.
I mean, yeah.
Well, but in both situations, they both lost on a last-minute field goal.
Yeah, I mean, but okay. Tom loses. Okay, I mean, and once again, I prepared a big play to Crow, and Demetrius didn't show up. But anyway, Stafford against Garoppolo. I mean, really?
That's not fun.
And a double down. This year he beat him in the first round. Last year he knocked him out of the championships. I mean, come on. Okay. So, and like I said, I've been knocking.
I mean, Garoppolo didn't exactly tear it up. I mean, people can mention Garoppolo, but he had in game.
No, I'm not. Like I said, defensive turnover, pick six. I understand, but
I mean, the story of the game is those 10 points.
The story of the game is the L that Aaron Rodgers had again. That's the story.
Right.
Of the game.
My point is, the L was because of those 10 points.
Well, it does.
Without the blocked field goal and without the blocked punt, we're not having this discussion.
Right, but without like you said, but those things did happen. So Aaron is now seven and 8. I mean, for the supposedly the all anointed one. I mean, it's kind of like sending Jesus in to throw the touchdown pass, but Barabbas, the guy, the thief beside him, is the one that won the game.
Right. I mean, they had so many opportunities. I mean, Aaron
Right.
Jones, that fumble right by the goal line.
Your
Your
whole all week, the only thing that every sports writer and even us was talking about was how cold it was in Green Bay, how Green Bay was suited for the weather, how Jimmy Garoppolo had never had a game below 50 degrees. I mean, come on.
Well,
there was so.
Time out. I watched Jimmy Garoppolo in 22-degree weather. Remember, the kid's from here. He's from Romeoville, Illinois. He went to Eastern Illinois University. I watched him. I sat in the stands and watched him play.
But
in cold weather his whole life.
But that's not the storyline that was put forth before the game.
By me, it was. I mean, I don't know.
But I'm talking about everyone that supposedly watches Sports Center and all the other major outlets and whatnot.
I watched Jimmy Garoppolo play high school and college football in cold weather.
Well, but like I'm saying, I mean, this was one of the things. But kind of moving on here. Let's see. What was our last question here before we start talking about predictions? Oh yeah. We always talk about going fishing, and we kind of associated with Charles Barkley and the guys. But Mike, Buffalo go fishing? Is this the fisherman's tale about the one that got away in the last 13 seconds? I had him in the boat. I had the net right there.
And that floundered away. This very well could be that kind of situation. I mean, we hate to see things like this. Dan Marino was this second year against the 49ers in the Super Bowl and never saw a Super Bowl again. Josh Allen is definitely a Hall of Fame talent. He's going to have to put the resume together, but if he never comes back, to these situations again, it's definitely one of those situations where you had the game in your hand. You won. It was 50 seconds left.
13.
Right. When they stopped the clock on the chain, since they kicked the ball in the end zone, which was the huge mistake.
Yeah.
Instead of being 6 or 7 seconds left, if they'd squibbed it, instead it's 13 seconds left because they kicked
13.
Because I was thinking about going to the refrigerator, and I'm like, 13. Let's see how this works out.
Yeah, especially after the fourth quarter. But you couldn't walk away because that whole 10 minutes was just fire. I mean, it was just blazing. Both teams just beating each other up. They just said, you know what? It was almost like an all-star game in basketball where no defense showed up. And it was just like, you score as many points as you want because we're going to score as many points as you want. And we're just going to have fun with this. And, whatever. What did you say? 15 seconds left? Hit
13.
13 seconds left. Hit Cheetah. Boom, gone. Touchdown.
If it had been 15 seconds, I might have walked away. It was the number 13 that intrigued me.
The bad luck number. And it sure was bad luck for the Bills because.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I had picked the Bills, and Tom Brady had just lost, and I'm like, oh my,
I sure as heck didn't pick the Bills. I didn't be that close.
I picked Kansas City because I think
I picked the Bills. I thought the Bills.
You picked the Bills, yeah.
Yeah, it was
I picked Kansas City.
Yeah, I think. Demetrius once again was in the friendly skies, and I think that's the way it came down. I think it was you had picked the Bills, and I had picked Kansas City, and Bill broke the tie. I think it was something like that.
Yeah.
It was an amazing game. But Bill, we've kind of seen this before. I mean, Buffalo 4 times in the Super Bowl.
Right, and I mean, this game reminded me of that Monday night game in the Estadio Azteca when the Rams, then still led by Jared Goff, faced off against the Chiefs. Remember that game? I think it was 54-50 or 54.
Yeah,
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 Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Remind me a little bit of that game where you figured, okay, the team that has the ball last, right, is going to win. I mean, you knew that going in, and this was that too. Everybody said it. The team that has the ball last is going to win. And you just can't leave that much time. It sounds funny saying it, but you can't leave that much. You can't have double-digit seconds if Patrick LeVon Mahomes is going to have the ball in his hands. You got to get down to single digits.
I guess so, because
Squib that kick, baby.
Yep.
Squib it.
Why do you think they didn't do
for
that?
a while? Let's let that clock burn.
Well, the announcer in the booths even said, "You have to squib this kick."
Right.
Everybody said
Yeah.
that. Yes, everybody said you got to squib that kick.
Yeah, but hey, it is
Special
what it is.
teams, and I say this as a former L3 on kickoff coverage, but special teams played a significant impact in every single one.
Every single game.
Every single one of them.
Game. Yes, yes. All right, guys. Well, let's talk about these playoffs a little bit here, because I thought I had some very interesting questions. Okay. Now, who gets the most, how did I put this? Targets. I didn't say catches.
Okay.
Who gets the most targets? Jamar, Tyreek, or Cooper? Mike?
Well, it's probably not going to be Tyreek, so I'll eliminate that. So it's definitely going to come down to Jamar and Cooper Kupp. The way they've been targeting Jamar Chase the last two games, but because the 49ers have such a horrible defensive back situation, I'm going to go Cooper Kupp.
Bill?
I'm going to agree. I think it's going to be Cooper Kupp, at least in part because, and this is just a feeling, I think the next game, the leading target guy is actually going to end up being T. Higgins. I think the other team's going to put so many resources into taking away Chase that T. Higgins goes off.
Very possible.
Very possible. Very possible. I was kind of debating on whether it was whether to put a question about Higgins or Beckham. But since we're here, Higgins or Beckham, who gets it? You think Higgins is going to go off? So therefore,
I think Higgins gets way more targets. Now, Beckham might have more yards, but he might do it in 3 catches. He might have 141 yards and 3 catches, but targets, Higgins, easy.
Okay. Just targets. What your thoughts? Your thoughts, Mike? Higgins or Beckham?
I agree with Bill. I think that Odell sort of limited to a cap of 5 to 6, where Higgins, I mean, he could be limited too, depending, but I like that idea of, okay, we've gone to Jamar Chase over and over and over again in the last 2 games. Surprise, we're not going with our best player. We're going to go with our very good second best player and targeted him. And therefore Higgins will overstep Odell, maybe by 3 targets.
Bill, most rushing yards, Cam Akers or Elijah Mitchell?
Ooh. I'm not allowed to write in Deebo Samuels. Okay.
Nope.
If those are the only 2 choices, then I'll go with Mitchell. The 49ers will run the ball. They have to run the ball. And they know, I mean, once again, they know Jimmy Garoppolo. And they know that their best chance of winning is keeping him to 24 passing attempts or under. Right? If they can keep to around 24 passing attempts, they have a very good chance to win this game. If he's throwing the ball over the yard, if he's going for 37 attempts, that's probably not the recipe for success. So they're going to run the ball a lot with all their people who run the ball. So that means probably about 12 or 13 carries for Debo. But I think I won't be surprised at all if Elijah Mitchell comes in around 19 or to 21 carries, because one, he's super talented. Super talented. I was a big fan of his in college. I'm thrilled to see him, another sixth rounder getting it done, but I was thrilled to see him getting his chance.
Mike?
Yeah, both defensive fronts are really good, but if I have to choose between what Elijah Mitchell and the 49ers offensive scheme comparable to Cam Akers coming off, this will be his fourth game with a torn Achilles, I think I'm going to have to go with Elijah Mitchell. Plus, I don't know how much patience they have left with Cam Akers after those 2 fumbles last week, which really put Tampa Bay in the driver's seat. So,
yep,
if he comes out and he fumbles again, then
all right, that could be it. Like he made the field again for the playoffs.
Yep.
Yeah, you might have to do an AB impression if he does that again. We were talking about the Chiefs against the Bungles, as I always call them. But let's kind of break it down here, and I'm not saying this is a perfect scenario, but let's just say we have Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes. We'll, for the sake of this argument, call them equal. They'll cancel each other out. Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, we'll cancel them out. And I know this is a stretch, but we'll also cancel out Kelsey and the Higgins, which would be Burrow's second target. I think we all agree. So is Joe Burrow the wild card in this game, Mike?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to try to get the Chiefs offense off the field, and I'm not sure Joe Mixon, because he's sort of like the home run hitter, and what you want is someone who's a ground pound. You just keep grinding and taking that time off the clock. And Joe Mixon isn't really grinding kind of running back. So what they're going to probably have to do is use Joe Burrow to hit those 5 to 10 yard passes and slow down. Okay, we got a first down. Let's eat the clock. Just, run the clock. Do it again. Sort of like how Peyton Manning used to do with the Indianapolis Colts. Yeah, you get a good play, then you just let it run, because that's really the only way you're going to get this game in hand and win against the Chiefs, because the Bengals defense is just not good enough to handle a Patrick Mahomes offensive attack. So how do you do it? You keep that offense off the field, and I think it's Joe Burrow who's going to be the key to all that.
What do you think, Bill? Is Joe Burrow a possession kind of back?
Well, you mean quarterback, you mean?
No, I said Joe Mixon.
No, you didn't say Joe Burrow, but you meant Joe Mixon, I guess. So, I mean, the real wild card is Jonah Williams, Isaiah Prince, and Fred Johnson. For those who are not familiar, those are the offensive tackles of the Bengals. And frankly, they're all guys who are borderline starters in the NFL. At some point, they're going to have to get that fixed. But getting back to Joe Mixon, I mean, Joe Mixon's 228 pounds. He just seems like he prefers to be in space. He's capable of running between the tackles, but he's a guy who physically should be able to take 25 carries also. But they tend to use him more sparingly. They throw the ball a fair amount to him as well. He's a good receiver. But even at Oklahoma, you didn't see him just banging the ball up there between tackles a lot, though it's something it looks like he should be able to do. He's a fairly good-sized running back. So that's an interesting question about why they don't do more of that. And to be fair, they do not have a great run-blocking offensive line, are there? Like, their offensive line is not great at anything. They're slightly better run blockers than they are pass protectors, but, you know, you wouldn't want to hang your hat on them as – they really need to fix that offensive line. But probably their best offensive lineman, and this is best in sort of quotes, is probably their guard, Hakeem Adedeji from Kansas. And he's solid. He's not spectacular. He's not amazing. He's not all pro. He's not a Pro Bowler. So that tells you something. When your best offensive lineman is not a Pro Bowler, not an all pro, he's just okay, they got a lot of work to do.
Most sacks. Bill, Bosa, or Von Miller?
Well, I mean, Bosa's a full-time player, and Von's just a part-time player.
Really? You think Von's going to be a part-time player in
I
this
mean, he
game?
has been. I mean, I'm just basing it on facts. I mean, he plays about 42% of the snaps. I mean, I don't know what you want me to say. Look up the numbers. I mean, that's just factual information. So Bosa plays more snaps. But let me think. I'm going to go Bosa barely, probably about half a sack. But I think Von Miller ends up making more of an impact. Like, I think he makes I think his sacks come at more important times, and I think at least one of his sacks leads to a turnover.
Mike, Bosa or Von Miller?
I think I'm going to go Bosa here. It's just hard to say going against probably one of the best defensive ends in football right now. So, yeah, I'm going to have to go Bosa.
Darnold or Armstead? Mike?
That's a good question. I don't know about Armstead. Donald, defensive tackle. I'm going to go Donald just because he's the greatest, maybe the greatest overall player in the history of the game. So I'm going to go Aaron Donald.
Bill?
Aaron Donald. Yeah, Aaron Donald has an understanding of how to deal with double teams. That is rare. And sometimes triple teams. Teams spend all their time game planning for him. And for him to still do what he does when he gets chipped and wham blocked, double teamed, and trap blocked. I mean, people do everything you can do to him. Everything. And even some things you can't do. I mean, that poor man that ended up having to play against Tampa Bay held him on literally every play. I'm not even exaggerating. Go back and look. He held him on every play, and it didn't help. I mean, he was getting so utterly dominated. You know, they really missed Tristan Wirfs. But, I mean, he held him every single play, like without exception. Sometimes it would just be like a light hold. Sometimes it was a flat-out tackle. And I guess he figured they can't call it every time because they could have thrown a flag on him every single snap that Aaron Donald would land above the top of him.
Bill, the Kansas City D or the Bungles D?
Kansas City. And Kansas City's defense isn't, they're not, the steel curtain. They're not the purple people eaters, the doomsday defense. They're not the no-name defense. Not the grit splits. They're a slightly above average. They were bad earlier this season. They've now become a slightly above average defense. But the Bengals defense, here's what I like about them. They have a really good secondary. And I even like their linebackers. Their defensive line is good, but not great. And once again, they don't have that pass rusher that you're forced to game plan for, right? It's like, oh man, how do we stop this monster? They don't have an Aaron Donald. They don't have a Joey Bosa. They don't have a Von Miller. They don't have, that one guy where you stay up all night drawing up protections, right? They don't have that guy that just scares them. The best one they have is Trey Hendrickson. He's a good player, right? He had a couple of really good years in New Orleans. They made a good signing in free agency. He's become a very good player for them as well. But he's still not quite. I mean, he's more like a Max Crosby type. But I'm not just saying that because he's white, but because he's the kind of guy that is very good, but an elite level, tackle can take him away. A Trent Williams type, or whatever. A great tackle can take him away in a way that your super elite guys still would find a way to win. But yeah, I certainly like him, but they don't have that guy as a pass rusher. So yeah, I'm going to lean Chiefs.
Mike, Chiefs or Bungles?
This is a tough one because you have the Bungles who are probably about mid as far as sacks go, middle ranked. Mm-hmm. And then the Chiefs aren't. The Chiefs don't really get after the passer all that much.
Right.
But you have one of the worst offensive line in football trying to protect that. So I think it's all very much probably kind of even considering where one's team's ranked and where one team's offensive line ranks. I think because Cincinnati's going to have to throw more, and either because they're behind or they're going to have to want to try to control that offense a little bit that way, that's going to lead them to be more susceptible to the sacks. So that's why I'm going to lean towards Kansas City.
Mike, everyone in the stadium, everyone that looks at this game, even thinks about this game on paper, knows that the way for San Francisco to win the game is through Deebo Samuel. Mike, how many overall yards will Deebo have in this game?
Overall.
I
think he's going to go for like 90 to 120. So I have to pick. I'm going to go split it down the middle. I'm going to go 105.
Bill.
117.
Ooh, 117. You guys are very precise there. Since everybody knows here that I'm a 49er fan in this particular dogfight, I wonder if I would be superstitious if I said 101.
Oh, the 101st, of course. Of course.
I'm just saying, Bill.
Good thing you weren't the first.
Hey, I could have been in the 173rd.
Oh, there you go. There you go. You could have.
Okay, guys, let's get down to our predictions here. Okay. NFL championship game. Rams against the 49ers. Bill?
I'm going to go Rams. I think it's
I want to know two things.
Oh, okay.
I want to know, are they going to cover the spread? And I'm not
What's
sure
the spread now?
I'm not sure what the spread is. I know the Kansas City spread is 7. I'm not sure what the spread is.
Ooh, I can look that up.
That's a healthy spread. Ooh, that scares me.
Yeah,
so the 49ers, Rams. Rams are favored by 3.5 with a 46 over under.
Okay, Bill.
Those are both about right. I'm gonna go. God, those are tough. God, those guys are good. I'm gonna go slightly over. I think half a point over. So I think it's 20, like a 47-point game. So God, they're good. And then for I have the Rams winning. He said, "Do they cover?" That's tough. I think the Rams win, but I don't think they cover.
Interesting. Mike.
I'm going to go with the 49ers, so they definitely cover since I'm going with the 49ers.
Oh, okay. Welcome to the club. All right.
Hell yeah.
Okay. Kansas City, what's the odds there, Mike? I last I heard they were favored by 7. Is that still the line?
That is still the line. And the over-under is 54.5. And I'm going to go Chiefs, and I'm going to even go over. I'm going to go Chiefs with the over on that.
Bill?
I'm going to agree. Chiefs and the over.
Okay. All right. I think we're all in agreement there. So, guys, we got one more show, I guess, before we knock this out. The Super Bowl is the day before Thanksgiving. Very appropriate. That way, no one has to worry about the wives hollering at them about their inattention. So, you can make sure you take care of that on Monday, and you can have a peaceful Super Bowl game on Sunday. So, Bill, your final thoughts, my man.
So, my final thoughts turn to this whole Jeff Garcia, Mina Kimes kerfuffle, controversy, tempest in a teapot, whatever. And I get it to some extent that there are people who played the game and, feel like there's always going to be some sort of separation between them and the rest of the world, right? Especially when you played at that level. And Jeff Garcia was a very solid quarterback for a very long time, both in the CFL and the NFL. But for him to go after Mina Kimes because, she's obviously a woman and she could not have played in the NFL or whatever. Well, one is just silly. I mean, it's one of those things that, how far do you go with this? Like, how far do you want to take that? Can people not, write about history if they didn't live through it, right? I mean, there's this silly to some extent. And Mina Kimes is one of the best out there. Male, whether it be a man, woman, whatever, she's very good at what she does. She's smart, and she's funny, and she's engaging. I'm not sure what it is that made Jeff Garcia decide today is the day I'm going to embroil myself in a controversy after being pretty darn quiet for a long time. I don't know. I don't know the man. I don't know anybody who knows the man. But, my advice is if you see some commentary and you're not wild about it, one, why drag someone's, whether a man or woman into it? Like that's probably your first mistake. And secondarily, I mean, you've been retired for a nice little bit of time here. I don't quite get what's the point. Are you going on a book tour? I mean, I don't know, whatever. I don't want I don't want to cast aspersions, but it's just sort of a strange. I mean, did you wake up this morning and think, today I'm going to embroil myself in a controversy with a female sports writer? I don't know. I'm not sure I understand it. Women who work in sports have almost always had to really be tough because there's always somebody, sometimes within their own industry, sometimes outside of their own industry, but there's always somebody who wants to make a remark or make it more difficult or challenge them or try to embarrass them. It's just, if you have women friends who work in the industry, and I do, some of the stories they tell, and you realize pretty quickly they're not exaggerating, they're not making it up, because I have Twitter. So I see these crazy things that people say, and these people are men, like 100% of the time, say these just wildly silly and occasionally inappropriate things to these women who write about sports that they would never write to a man who writes about sports, even if he never played a single down of football, which a great number of the sports writers have not. Now, shout out to Steve White, who was a pretty good player himself. But the vast majority of our sports writers were either, if they played at all, were bad, like me, or just didn't play. But you don't see the same sort of challenging of their right to write about the sport that you see with women. And some of the women, even if they didn't play football, and some of them did actually, but even if they didn't play football, I mean, Stacey Dale Schumann, or I guess she's back to Stacey Dale, was a, what, 3-time All-American in Oklahoma? She certainly understands sports. Now, I don't think anyone's gone after her in a while, but a woman who's gotten to this point in this industry has accomplished a lot, and it wasn't by luck. You know, I mean, I want to make it very clear that a woman who's gotten to this point in this industry, writing about sports and particularly football in particular, she's been through the ringer, right? She's been through the ringer. Her people say, especially with the internet, people say the wildest things. Look, what? I mean, my head not explode, implode. Like my whole body's about to implode when I see some of these things that people tweet at these women who are just trying to do their jobs. And a lot of them, and Mina Kimes is one of them, do their jobs extremely well. And so the next time you're thinking about hitting send on that Instagram post or that Twitter post or that, I don't know, Pinterest, I don't know, whatever else it is, Snapchat, whatever it is, and you're just trying to tear down a woman who writes about sports and, perhaps in particular football, because, I don't know, you remember the He-Man Women Haters Club, or you just don't like women doing something that you think only men should do, or whatever your issue is, think about, one, is this helpful? Is the thing I'm going to say helpful, right? Is the thing I'm going to say true? Is the thing I'm going to say going to move smart conversation forward? If the answer is not yes to all three of these things, then just leave it in your head. It's okay. Tell it to your buddy. Put it in your group chat with your buddies. Let them see this hilariously inappropriate thing you decided you wanted to say about Christina Pink or MJ Acosta Ruiz or whoever it is that today's target is. And that's my final thought.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that, Bill. Mike, before I give you the final thought, there is one thing that I would like to address, and that is Antonio Brown. And the reason why I choose to address this is because mental health issues. As a former veteran, I've had my bouts with PTSD, and I've had, I remember, I'm old enough to remember the stigma of mental health. But gentlemen, this is 2022. We have some of the finest doctors available. We have decades of research that have went into it. It's no longer where they sit you in, they strap you down and put electric through your body, if you
there's no
don't have
sponge
the
in your
right.
mouth anymore. Yes, there's no more of that. Yes, they got rid of that.
Those days are, if it's not bad for you to admit that you don't have that you have a problem. It's bad when you cannot admit that you have a problem and do something with it.
Yep.
And that's my final thoughts for the evening. Mike, go ahead. Hopefully I didn't take yours.
No, you in fact you enhanced it. Basically, I think all those points are well said and important, and I think it all goes back to a couple things. One, as you mentioned, I think what you said, there was 10 head coaches jobs available, and we sort of talked about that last week. Here's an ample opportunity to see people of color shine in the ways that they need to be, shone on, and that hopefully people like Byron Leftwich and others get this shot, because
Eric Bieniemy
and countless others get that shot. Secondly, yes, it's very important that people talk about people with mental health, whether it's PTSD, depression, anxiety. If we give those avenues as much as we give, try to give and should give avenues for people of color to be head coaches, we also should give avenues for those dealing with, personal issues that ramp to say it's okay to reach out for help. It's okay to, sort of not be okay. And sort of what Bill was saying in the text and tweet and things, I think for me, and everything that Bill said was correct, but for me, what it comes down to, and what I would probably put on the back of my helmet if I was a professional athlete, would just be sort of just a statement of don't be a and the moment you're someone that's an asshole, the moment you should not be considered a part of a group, any group. And so that's one of the things that keeps me and watching out for others, is as long as you're a peaceful person and as long as you bonding with people and give people the opportunity to express their colors, then you'll always be part of my group. So that's my final thought.
Hey, thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate your time. Look forward to talking with you next week. Have a great one. Have a great weekend.
You too, sir.
You too, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. See you soon.
See you guys soon. Bye-bye.